Ladies and gentlemen, this is El Cochino, Tom Lawler, and I'd like to welcome you to the podcast that puts the lotion on its own skin, LuchaWorld. Bitchin'.
Welcome everyone to LuchaWorld Podcast episode 112. Fredo Esparza here, and this week we will recap Triplemania XXVII from this past Saturday, and also look back at Jushin Thunder Liger's farewell show in Arena, Mexico from July 19th. I think I did a podcast the week prior to that, so I wanted to do something concerning the Liger. I kind of want to talk about the Liger show. We'll also talk about the upcoming PWG Battle of Los Angeles. That happens later in September, and it looks like it's going to be one of the more... it's going to be very lucharific with so many guys coming in, a couple of guys debuting for the first time in PWG. So we'll talk about that. There's 2 more spots remaining, so there's still a possibility that there might be 2 more luchadors. I'm guessing that might, I don't know, it kind of seems like they might be done with 7. So we'll talk about that as well. But first, we will talk about Triplemania. It just happened this past week on this past Saturday, August 3rd. I thought it was I would say it was a pretty good show. Not I don't know if it was a great show, just a good show. I thought the main event was really good, surprisingly good considering who was in the match. But I think it had a lot of smoke and mirrors that helped it. And actually, I think everybody expected that to be part of the whole match. A lot of weapons and blood and interference to make the match a little stronger. I thought there were a couple of matches that were surprisingly good, a couple that you kind of expected to be good, and then there was like a match that I think everybody obviously there was also the one match that everybody figured was going to be a bit of a train wreck, and then there was another one that everybody kind of assumed could go either way, but it ended up being a pretty good show. The production on the show is really good. It aired on Twitch. If you're not a subscriber, you could get, if you have an Amazon Prime account, you could get it as part of your Amazon Prime, the one free Twitch subscription you could get through that. Or you could actually just pay, I think it's like $5 a month, and you could watch Triplemania. It ended up being about 5 hours, a little over 5 hours. If you watch the pre-show, it was way past 5 hours. I think it went about 5.5 hours total. I think I started watching a little bit before the first match. Actually, I started watching right when it started, and then I turned it off, and then I checked on Twitter, and the Cubs fan, via his Lucha Blog Twitter account, mentioned the show was about to start, and I think I got in right when they were introducing the guys for the pre-show match. But the prediction itself was pretty good. I had a minor glitch at certain points during the show. I don't know if it was maybe just my internet, because I didn't see other people mention it. But every so often, the video feed would kind of like die out. It might be just something that happens with streaming services. At this point, I'm just beginning to think it's just streaming services that have that little glitch. And if it's not anything too bad, nobody really complains about it. Early on, they actually had an audio sync problem that they really fixed very quickly. I watched the Spanish commentary, so the Spanish feed. I didn't watch the English one. I know they had a different person who was a part of the commentary team, teaming up with Matt Stryker. But, honestly, it doesn't matter if you have Vampiro, Matt Stryker, you put them separate and you put in somebody who's reliable or dependent or pretty good. It's still not something I really want to listen to. And, I know a lot of people kind of like aren't huge fans of Jose Manuel Guillen and Hugo Savinovich sometimes, because they do sometimes scream a lot. Especially Hugo Savinovich, but I think Hugo, you kind of expect that out of. But Jose Manuel Guillen still calls the matches. He does scream when he's excited, something that's a little more natural. Whereas I think Hugo's pretty much, you already know he's going to do a tangana and all these other whatever other phrases he has. I never watched Spanish commentary in WWE shows that he was on, and I think he did the Puerto Rico I watched, he did some English commentary, but it was never this. It does get a little annoying after a while, but they're still a lot better than anything else they're going to have, or anything they've had in the past. So I didn't have a problem with that. The show opened, as I said, with the pre-show. Arcangel Divino, Astrolux, and Dragon Bane beat Aramis, Ares, and Toxin. It took me a while to figure out who Toxin was because I was expecting Latigo to be in that match for whatever reason, since he's been on there a little more frequently. I think he's been on a few shows, but not recently, at least the ones that I've seen. But this was a pretty good match to start the show. It started off a little bit sloppy with Arcangel Divino and Astrolux kind of messing up a couple of spots early on, but they were okay afterwards. And I mean, you can't go wrong with these guys. Your typical strong opening match for AAA with a lot of big high spots, a lot of big dives, guys coming up with really creative stuff, especially Aramis, who did that really cool spot where he was carrying two guys. And I mean, you just got to watch that because it was really cool. I think I linked to on the recent Lucha Report, the one with the Triplemania results. I linked to the GIF with that move specifically because it was really good. Just a really fun match. Ares is really good. Aramis the same. I think all these guys have potential to be like stars of the future in not just within AAA but working independent shows. As soon as they get their visas resolved and whatever the government, the U.S. government, whatever their mood is when it comes to letting people travel into the United States, at some point these guys got to be more frequently in the United States because they're really good. Especially Aramis and Ares. Ares is here a lot more often, and I think he's somebody that really needs to be on some of the bigger indie shows. If you're a U.S. indie promoter or somebody who like has the ear of an indie promoter, I would suggest you recommend Ares right now since he does work more frequently in the United States. He's really good. I think Aramis at some point is going to be coming in. Dragon Bane's pretty good also. Like I said, all these guys really have a lot of talent. Really good opener. Just a fun match to start the show. So then we get to the beginning of the actual show with the first match being the AAA mixed tag team match. Four-way. It's a four-way match for the AAA mixed tag team titles. And you had Lady Maravilla teaming up with Villano III Jr. against Niño Hamburguesa teaming up with Big Mami. Of course, they're the champions defending the titles coming into this. Sammy Guevara and Scarlett Bordeaux and Australian Suicide and Vanilla Vargas. A lot of people were kind of like not really as high on this match. I just thought it was a pretty good match. I didn't think it was I didn't think it was as bad as some people were making it out to be. I think there were some moments where you kind of like wonder what's going on with these people. I think Sammy, I don't know what it is about Sammy Guevara on these shows sometimes, but sometimes it kind of, I think because he's playing up his character, people just aren't as into him because he's playing the jerk. And but I actually thought this was a good way to open the show. Lady Maravilla also kind of nearly died during this show. Their scary moment where Villano III Jr. And then we found out later on that Villano III Jr. suffered a concussion. So maybe there was more to it than because both of them were a little bit off. But Lady Maravilla, there was a spot where Villano III Jr. tried to carry and flip her over onto, I think it might have been Niño Hamburguesa, but he couldn't get her properly, and so she nearly landed like she landed in a way where she looked like she was doing a somersault and folding instead of like doing the full flip. And the good thing is that, I mean, if you've seen Lady Maravilla, she's very flexible when she wrestles. I think I've mentioned this, like that's one of the things I find really weird about her when I see her wrestle, is that she's very flexible. But it worked for her in this because at least it might have saved her life in that one spot. They did a lot of dives in the match. The crowd was really into Niño Hamburguesa and Big Mami as usual. Scarlett Bordeaux, people like constantly like all they talk about is the looks, and I think, I mean, obviously she is very attractive, but I actually think she's pretty good in the ring. I don't think I think she's somebody that she's reliable. I don't think she's like, I think everybody was expecting her to be horrible. I think she's perfectly good. I mean, in matches, I've not had a problem seeing her, like what she does in the ring. She's been perfectly fine. The other good thing is that at least nobody in the crowd touched her, because the last thing we needed was another Twitter meltdown over a fan ringside grabbing her and how everybody just gets very worked up about that stuff. That didn't happen on this show. Australian Suicide did a couple of cool dives. There was one where he kind of nearly hit the side of the ring apron, but he was fine. I think Vanilla might have done something where she might have got hurt. But overall, I thought this match was pretty good at one point, and then it just had this really bad finish. And of course, then we found out that Villano 3 Jr. might have suffered a concussion. So that kind of explains why that might have explained half of what was wrong with the match, the finish. But the other part was, typical Hijo de Tirantes and the referee crap that they do. So to close out the match, Lady Maravilla fakes a leg injury. So she's selling on the side, and Niño Hamburguesa, if you follow the storyline, Niño Hamburguesa is totally in love with her. So he checks on her. And while that's going on, Big Mommy does a plancha onto Villano 3 Jr., covers him for the pin. I guess at that point, something was supposed to happen, except Villano 3 Jr. kind of just didn't move. And Big Mommy was pinning him. So then Niño Hamburguesa turns to look at their direction. Hijo de Tirantes is there. He sees that Big Mommy has Villano 3 Jr. pinned. Lady Maravilla comes in, fouls Niño Hamburguesa, and covers him for the pin. And at that point, you would think with Big Mommy pinning Villano 3 Jr. and Lady Maravilla pinning Niño Hamburguesa, you would think it would be a double pin. So, I don't know how they would have done it. They probably would have just continued, or would have ended in a draw or something like that. But what ended up happening was Hijo de Tirantes only counted the pin for Lady Maravilla and totally ignored the other one. So it kind of messed up the finish. Lady Maravilla and Villano 3 Jr. ended up winning the titles. They're the new AAA Mixed Tag Team Champions, ending a pretty long run of Niño Hamburguesa and Big Mommy as champions. So we have new champions. The storyline kind of is not over with, because Big Mommy after the match was very upset at Lady Maravilla for the way she's been treating and using Niño Hamburguesa, and she vowed revenge. So that feud is still going to go on. I think a lot of people just want it to end. Others are okay with it. There's a mixed bag of all these stuff. I think a lot of fans who are getting into AAA are kind of like, they kind of want to see some progression into storylines. What they don't realize is if there's like a love storyline in AAA, the odds are this could be something that goes on for years. Anybody who watched the early 2000s or like the 2004, 2005 years, you'll remember the whole how long that Billy Boy Fabi Apache Grand Apache angle went on for like, I think 3-4 years. And they did add a lot of stuff, but it was a really good storyline. This one is actually pretty good, but I think people are just kind of a little worn out with it, and they kind of want to see a little bit of, something different. But I thought it was an okay match to open the show, the beginning of the show. It wasn't as good as the pre-show match. After that, they had a tribute video with a couple of, I think Rey Mysterio Jr., Conan, a couple of other people were talking about Paraguayo. Then they showed Paraguayo, Joaquin Roldan, Antonio Peña, and Paco Alonso. CMLL's Paco Alonso. And they, I didn't catch that, and a lot of people that I talked to afterwards didn't catch that they were inducting them into the Hall of Fame, or re-inducting them into the Hall of Fame, the AAA Hall of Fame. And because a lot of people were like, oh, that's a classy move that, AAA is recognizing Paco Alonso by adding him to that. But then once Mas Lucha sent out that tweet about how they were adding him to the Hall of Fame, I think a lot of people kind of just saw that as, he's never been involved with AAA. And honestly, I think if you were gonna add, if the intention wasn't to try to get Sofia Alonso to want to work with them, and they're probably gonna say that it wasn't, because knowing some of the people that work for AAA, they're gonna deny it. They would have, if that wasn't the case, they would have inducted Salvador Luteroth into their Hall of Fame, considering he's always been mentioned as the man who brought Lucha Libre to Mexico. He's always given that credit for that. So you would think they would have inducted him years ago and upset Paco Alonso and the rest of the family, but they didn't do that. They decided to do it at this point, and I kind of find that a little bit a questionable thing to do. I thought that was that was the only thing I kind of thought, they took something that was deemed classy, and then it kind of changed to like something that had a different motives going to it. After that, they Dorian rolled on, and Silver King's family, his two sons, and Dr. Wagner Jr.'s Galeno del Mal and Hijo de Dr. Wagner Jr. They came out to induct Silver King into the AAA Hall of Fame. Well deserved. I mean, he was there for several years, on and off since I think 2008. So he's been there for a while, and he was a part of several storylines, and I think he was a talented wrestler, so I think he deserved it. A good addition to their Hall of Fame. I mean, honestly, Hall of Fames, I think everybody has a different opinion of Hall of Fame. Some people take it a little more seriously, others don't take it as much. But it's a nice thing to do for the family and for Silver King's memory. After that, we had a three-way trios match for the AAA World Trios titles. These titles were I think they mentioned on commentary that they were vacated by the Jinetes del Aire because for those of you who maybe haven't watched TV or recent or maybe haven't gone to their YouTube channel or read any of the news, La Parca had a sit-down meeting with Laredo Kid, Hijo del Vikingo, and Mystices Jr. And in that segment, he kind of felt that Laredo Kid had already surpassed them, and it was time surpassed being a trios wrestler. So he thought he should, and he was already becoming a superstar. So he kind of viewed him now that at a higher level, and so he decided to move him. He didn't move him. He suggested that they should let him go and add Golden Magic into the Jinetes del Aire as the new member, and everyone agreed with him. And so I guess at that point they decided that they would vacate the titles. I think they brought out the titles with them, but they did vacate them. And in the match, Hijo del Vikingo, Mystices Jr., and Golden Magic ended up beating Poder del Norte, which is of course Tito Santana, not the WWE guy, Mocho Cota Jr., Carta Brava Jr. I don't even know why I said that about the WWE guy. I think people listening to this show should already know that. And the Exotico trio of Pimpinela, Maximo, and Mamba. Now, going in, I thought this match had potential as being good if they would have got rid of the Exoticos, but they were still in there. And surprisingly, this match was really good. I actually thought this was the best match on the card. Honestly, just thought it was really good. The new Jinetes del Aire and Poder del Norte were on fire in this match, and I really thought the Exoticos brought what they didn't limit the other guys in what they did. And actually Maximo did a little more than he usually does. Usually Maximo has kind of been mailing it in. He's kind of become La Mascara, where he just basically doesn't really do much in matches. He's more just the gimmick at this point. And so he ends up doing he actually had a really cool moonsault in the match also, and a tope. So they were just really good in this match. Hijo del Vikingo, stellar as usual. And, the other guys held their own in this. I think Poder del Norte I think that's the one thing that CMLL is missing right now. They don't have a trio like Poder del Norte underneath. Like, you have your top trios that are working the semi-main and the main event, but then you need that other trio that can work the second, third, fourth match. They don't have that right now. And I think that's something they really should consider, because if you've watched a lot of the lineups and even the shows that CMLL has, the Rudo side is so bad. I mean, they don't have, like, if Tiger isn't around, if Tiger, Virus, and, I don't know who else they use for that. There's a couple other guys that they use. If those guys aren't around, it's basically Dark Magic, Sagrado, Misterioso Jr. Although Misterioso Jr., I think sometimes he could turn it on at points, but he's not really like, he's not at that. He's not what he was a couple of years ago. He's a little older, so he's not at that level. Okumura's in those matches, so you kind of have this big drop off in those matches, and I think that's something that they really should consider, finding a trio that they could actually, elevate some guys that can actually work that style, that can actually be good bases for the high flying guys, instead of having these high flying guys go work the openers and have them just work with Espanto Jr. and Hijo del Signo and all those horrible guys. But yeah, this was a really good match. I thought this was, like I said, I thought this was probably the best match on the card. Other people said the main event was a lot better. I think it's if you're more of a if you're more into the blood and guts, you're gonna be into the main event. If you're more into the high flying and this match actually had some chair shots and stuff like that, so it wasn't just your traditional lucha match. But it was really, like I said, I thought it was a really fun match. Really, really impressed by Hijo Vikingo specifically, and Poder del Norte as well. After that, we had the horrible Copa Triplemania. This, I don't know why I think if AAA got rid of this match, and I know I feel bad because of all these guys that were in the match, they wouldn't have. I mean, they could have added them into something else, because there's a couple of other guys they could have just gotten rid of and done something different. But this match basically takes up. It didn't take as much time as that one with Jarrett I think I don't think they did it last year. I think they did it previous year. Jarrett and all those guys were in that match. I think that ended up lasting like an hour, just because they had more people in that one than they had in this one. This one they did have fewer people in the match. They had Eclipse Jr., Pagano, Chessman, Daga, Drago, Puma King, Averno, Superfly, Aerostar, Monster Clown, Murder Clown, Rey Escorpion, La Parca, and they also had Conan and Vampiro. Earlier in the show, I should mention, Conan came out and he said that he just came out and said he was gonna do something, and I don't know, he just riled up the crowd, and then he came out for this match. Pagano ended up winning the Copa Triplemania, but one of the things that I didn't like about this was that you couldn't see like the eliminations, so nobody had any idea what was going on. Also, the pinfall or submission or over the top rope, sometimes you had a guy getting pinned, and then when somebody was getting thrown over the top, you didn't even see it because they were busy showing you the next guy coming in, or the guys on the side brawling, whatever they were just missing. The camera guys were just missing a lot of stuff. Some of the highlights from this match: Aerostar actually came in. They actually came up with I think it was a cool entrance, just because he came in from the rooftop, and he was on like some weird contraption that brought him down, and then he did a dive off of it. That was like a 20-foot drop, which I thought was fine. But it's like, I also thought it was kind of like kind of corny, just because I think everybody's kind of starting to get this to be the Aerostar thing, where he does this big crazy dive out on any show now, because even like big shows, it used to be just big shows, but now he's doing it on even like some of the TV tapings they do. They're becoming less impactful, and honestly, nobody even remembers them because something else happens on the show and everybody focuses on that stuff. And on this show, that's exactly what happened. Within this, like the post match for this show, everybody forgot about what Aerostar did. And also, why do it on this show when you basically Aerostar doing a dive off of the 20-foot drop or whatever it was? Why do it on this show when you basically have Cain Velasquez, you have the mass match, and then you have the other surprises, you have the AEW people involved on the show. So it kind of like, it ends up being the 5th or 6th big story on the show, so it kind of makes no sense to do it. Like when Carvernario hits his plancha to the floor, usually you don't have anything else happening on the CMLL shows when he's doing it, because when he does it, it's a big show and he's doing the plancha to the floor, and it's usually during a big match for him. It's like a singles match, so it's usually one of the featured matches on the show. So when Aerostar did this, it was kind of silly. Conan making his appearance was hilarious. He wore a Trump t-shirt that Microman Fever said looked like Hitler. At first I was like, At first I was kind of not sure about that, but then when I saw the picture of it, he was pretty right on it, just because if you see it from far away, it kind of, because it basically was just it was just a black and white type of thing, so you really couldn't see the drawing of it till you saw the close-up of it. So I could see why he kind of thought it looked like Hitler and ended up being Trump. And Conan basically, as soon as he showed up into the ring earlier in the show, he couldn't walk down the stairs of the entrance. So this time he came in from the side of the ring entrance, and he climbed up onto the top rope, sat there, and he actually drank a beer while he was watching everybody. I think he was directing the action in the match, and then Vampiro came out, and everybody was talking about how Vampiro is dealing with early onset. I think he started early onset Alzheimer's and Parkinson's and whatever other stuff. I think he has arthritis. He said he had a heart attack years ago or something, or stuff, a bunch of different illnesses that he's dealing with. But he came out and did his spots. It's funny because I saw some of the reaction to it in Spanish, the people who were covering the show, and they were talking about how he said he's dealing with all these illnesses, but he's not. He thinks this wrestling will help cure these illnesses. No, it won't. I don't understand who even thinks that. Who's even reporting that and thinks that's even possible. But it's Vampiro, so the odds of it ending that way, that he somehow cures himself, it wouldn't shock me, just because that's the way. You never know what Vampiro's what he's trying to say, what direction he's going with, what he's angling with. I would not be surprised if suddenly he's cured because of all his he's back in wrestling, and it's cured him. You never know with Vampiro. Very, very interesting individual. Everybody else, I thought this match was pretty much nobody was really as into it. Rey Scorpion came out, and I think even Pagano didn't really do that much. The match itself, once Pagano beat Chessman, they brought out the trophy for him. I was so distracted because there was one of the guys, I think the camera grip, the guy helping the camera guy, he looked like Sexy Chino. For whatever reason, he looked like Sexy Chino. He's a local Los Angeles wrestler, for those who don't know who he is. And you can look him up on Google. You just write Sexy Chino wrestler. You see what I mean. It just really confused. It kind of just distracted me. But Pagano ends up winning the Copa Triplemania. They give him the trophy. Lights go out. They play the TV static on the screens, and they. At first, I thought, man, maybe it's Jericho coming in to save us from Copa Triplemania. But I knew Jericho, I think, was in City of Industry earlier in the day, so he definitely wasn't going to be able to make it to Monterrey, wherever, to Mexico City. So lights turn on. Ali Park is in the ring. Ali Park and his sons, Hijo de Ali Park and Ali Park Jr., and they start to beat on Pagano. Ali Park grabs Pagano's the Copa Triplemania trophy and destroys it. I think they were trying to remake the Paraguayo Jr. Attack on Hijo de Santo from when Hijo de Santo won. I think it was the Leyenda Plata several years ago. I think they were trying to remake that. And the crowd really was into this. They were actually booing Ali Park. And then Ali Park cut a promo ripping on everyone, on Pagano, on AAA, on Maricela Pena, on the fans. Cursed a lot. Everything he doesn't get to do in CMLL, he got to do here. And then he challenged Pagano to a mask versus hair match. And he continued to beat on him. And that's, I think, how it ended. I don't think Pagano answered, or I think he might. I don't think he actually had a chance to answer because he was beaten up. So that's the big return for Ali Park to AAA, and that's. I think a lot of people. There was some people who weren't expecting that. I think with Ali Park, you never say that never as far as where he's going to be, because I actually thought when he showed up that he might end up being the surprise wrestler in the Cain match, the Cain Velasquez match later on the night. But no, he was just basically just there for this, and I think that really was a big that pretty much overshadowed Aerostar's dive. So that was interesting. Will be interesting to see if he comes back to CMLL. I'm guessing that's not going to be an issue because they did that last year with him working both promotions. So I mean, I think that means Ali Park's has a shot at being on all three TV in this year, I think he's going to end up being on all three TV networks and at least three TV networks in Mexico with Televisa, Azteca, and Imagen TV. So maybe I think he's probably been in a few others too. So after that, we had the women's TLC match. Tessa Blanchard beat Taya, Lady Shani, Fabi Apache, Chica Tormenta, La Hiedra, and the returning Ayako Hamada. Prior to the match, Kira showed up in a wheelchair and announced that she would not be able to wrestle because of an injury. She was then attacked by Chica Tormenta, knocked her off her wheelchair, and as that was happening, that's when they announced Ayako Hamada. I thought this match was... I don't know, I wasn't expecting much from this match, and I thought the match really wasn't that... I don't know, I didn't think it was... Like, to me, I thought it was an okay match, but it could have been way better. I think if you're going to have a TLC match, they should at least use a little more of the TLC. Other than Ayako Hamada, who, whenever she's in these matches... Actually, the thing I don't really like about the TLC matches is that if you're putting a belt or a title or whatever you want to call it up for people to go and out and reach from a ladder, there should be more effort in doing that rather than everybody brawling outside the ring and doing all these other things. There should always be somebody trying to climb up a ladder at all times, unless everybody's completely knocked out and, somebody does a crazy tope suicida, they do the train, the train dives and all that. It's understandable that everybody's out, but for the most part, I think at all points in time, there should be a little bit more of a focus and everybody trying to climb up the ladder to grab the belt. Also, I thought the camera crew really didn't catch they didn't catch the finish. Actually, they panned out to the women brawling, and then they came back and Tessa Blanchard was holding the AAA Reina de Reinas title that had just been vacated. I think most of the focus in this match was really Chica Tormenta's fall. The dive she did to the outside, or the drop, as I said. She actually, before that, Taya actually brought out a staple gun, and she stapled a picture of herself onto Chica Tormenta. That I thought that was probably the best part in this match. I thought that was funny. I don't know if it should be funny when you're watching something like that. Shouldn't be comedic. I don't think that was the intention, but I took it that way. And then later on, Chica Tormenta, as I said, she was climbing up onto the top rope. I think she was gonna go through I think she had Taya or somebody on a ladder, and she was gonna do a dive onto her. And for whatever reason, the girl on the ladder moved out of the way, which was going to happen, and then Chica Tormenta was supposed to go through the ladder, only she didn't do that. She ended up just grazing her arm on the ladder and going, she just fell onto the floor. It looked horrible. They had paramedics come out right away to check on her. Horrible drop, and I think that kind of took the wind out of the match and kind of distracted everyone from, I think from watching the match to being more concerned on how Chica Tormenta was doing. Later on, we found out she was okay. She tweeted out that she was doing fine, but still it was a nasty spill to the floor. I kind of think Tessa Blanchard's pretty good in the ring. So, but like I said, I think I said this on Lucha Talk when we did the reaction show. I do kind of feel that they shouldn't have done TLC with these women. I think they should have just done a Torneo Cibernético or something, or an elimination match, just because I don't think this, you've had a lot of these women kind of like, you're starting to build them up into something like the divisions. What has it been? Maybe the last year has really been when it's kind of moved, it's kind of picked up in the last year. And instead of like it being more focused in just wrestling, it kind of doing this type of gimmick match. I kind of think it wasn't the right time to do it on this show. It just didn't feel good. It didn't come across well. They probably should have done, if they would have done something a little more, just, an elimination match. You had Lady Shani the past couple of shows where she's really kind of like been working more of, doing a little more technical wrestling and being a little more of a submission hold type of wrestler. I think she could have done a little bit better in this match. She didn't get to do that stuff. I don't know. It just kind of it just didn't have much for me. The other highlight in the match was Liger getting, I think she got DDT'd or suplexed onto like a bunch of thumbtacks on the ring entrance, and I thought that was like an interesting spot. But I kind of would have preferred something a little just more without the TLC aspect of the match. After that, we got to the final three big matches, which were really the matches that everybody wanted to see. The sixth match was Cain Velasquez, Cody Rhodes, and Psycho Clown beating Taurus, Tejano Jr., and the surprise luchador, which was probably the least surprising surprise luchador of all time, Killer Cross. I think everybody kind of just expected it to be him. I don't know if I think AAA was probably holding out hope that they could find somebody else to be the luchador sorpresa and had Killer Cross kind of be just like the backup plan. If that wasn't the intention and they were basically all the time going to get Killer Cross in this match, they probably should just announce Killer Cross, and they could have done like videos with him, talking about what he was going to do to Cain Velasquez on the show. It would have made a little bit more sense for that. I thought the match was okay. I think it served its purpose. It kind of they showed you Cain Velasquez and what he could do in the ring, and he actually was pretty good in the ring. I think the only thing I didn't like was that he wore a mask, and it kind of like, if you're gonna have like the media kind of like be involved and put a lot of focus in this match, I think you could have I think it would have been better if he was unmasked, and he could have worn the mask perfectly fine, or maybe even wrestled a little bit of the match with the mask, but he should have taken it off, and I think it would have led to like a little bit more of a little more exposure, not just for him, for the other guys. I think it probably would have added a little more interest to the match from the mainstream media. But I thought he did good. He did very well. You could tell the early stuff he did were like stuff that if you watched his training with Psycho Clown, you kind of knew he was already like, that was something he was going to add into the match. I thought having him go against Taurus and Tejano more within in the ring when he was actually wrestling, that was actually the best way to use him and to get him more of a an easier go of his debut match. Because I think if he would have been in there with Cross, I don't know. I think that his involvement with Cross was mostly outside the ring when they were brawling, or whenever they would brawl, it was more him and Cross. Whereas when he was trying to do stuff like lucha, it was always with Tejano Jr. or Taurus. Cody Rhodes, I don't really think he added much to the match, other than that he did a really cool dive, that tope suicida to the outside, that Taurus was like a little bit, like if he would have just gone, like any other guy probably would have just like said, oh, he hit me with a tope, and he would have just landed wherever he was. Taurus, when he took the tope, he actually he flew over the guardrail just to make it like add a little more of a, whoa, this is a cool dive. And look at what he did to Taurus, and I thought that was him trying to make sure he gets on the AEW radar, and I'm sure he's already on it because he's really good. Like I said, I thought there was I don't think we got a lot of Psycho Clown either in this match, other than the belt, using the belt. But I thought it was an okay match. It wasn't anything that I think it served its purpose because the fans were really into it, and Cain was there, and he gets some recognition, and it gets some attention. I think there's already interest in Cain as far as post Triplemania, as far as him being more involved in wrestling. He already said that he plans on being on 2 more shows for AAA, which everybody assumes is going to be the Madison Square Garden show and the Forum show in Los Angeles. So that should be something interesting to see what happens with him as far as those shows, and then beyond that, because I do think there might be some interest in him from, if he does consider getting more into wrestling, I think there would be some interest as far as AEW or WWE or other promotions, because I do think he showed enough of a skill level that should be able to, like, he's not horrible in the ring. He's actually he looks like he's pretty good. Plus I also think a lot of people were talking about how he didn't try to be an MMA guy in a wrestling ring. But people also have to remember he was in a Lucha Libre show. He was trained by Lucha people for this match. So with the focus of him being in a lucha match. So I think that also helped. I'm sure like if he was to go to AEW or WWE or something like that, the people that were training him would probably like, you know, switch it up a bit and not actually like, he would probably change some of that stuff. Although, you know, he did say he really enjoys lucha libre, so maybe he would always want to have that, an element from that in what he does in the ring. I do think he'd actually have a good shot of being a good wrestler. I don't know how big a star he would be, but he would coming in as a UFC guy. He would obviously be already a guy who's obviously a headliner, a main eventer. So like I said, it did serve its purpose. The 7th match was Pentagon Jr., Phoenix, and Laredo Kid beating Kenny Omega and the Young Bucks. This match I thought was disappointing. I think I don't think it was as good as it could have been. It wasn't bad. I thought it was good, but I was expecting, like, everybody was raving about the AEW match that they had, and I thought, you know, maybe this would actually be at that level. But for whatever reason, we always get this with AAA. The guys, when they work outside of Mexico, it's a lot better outside of Mexico than it is in Mexico for whatever reason. Even the CMLL guys, I will also say that. Any dream match that you think would be a dream match, they do it in the US and it's like a lot better, and then they do it in Mexico and people, it's not considered at the level of what they did in the US or in Japan or anywhere else. I don't know if it's because the guys they're not putting in the effort. I don't think it's that, because these guys with Phoenix, you never question the effort with those guys. But I do kind of, I don't know, like with Kenny Omega, I kind of thought he didn't really seem as interested in this match. He wasn't horrible. Like, I won't say they were horrible. I just thought it wasn't at that level of what you would expect. And also, I think the crowd, the other problem with this, with what they're doing with the AEW guys, the crowd isn't reacting to these guys. It's like, I think when they book these guys, they're kind of just booking them in a way where it's like, it's for the smart fans, and they're not booking them for the casual fans. And that's something that they gotta kind of like, maybe like switch it up a bit, because when you have like when you bring in American guys, like if you bring in a guy, like look at the guys that, like the CML guys that have come in, when they come in and they're just like a work rate guy, they're usually not, they don't get the same reaction. But you bring in a guy who like does a pro America character or Trump character, whatever you want to call it, they get over big time. They get a really strong reaction, even if they're not anywhere near as good as what Kenny Omega and the Young Bucks are. But they still get a better reaction. Cody Rhodes is the same. But I think Cody Rhodes, obviously being a baby face on the show, that's a little different. But I think that's something that they should have done a little more with, especially with the, I think the Young Bucks, they could have done, they're more geared as heels in Mexico. I think they could have done a little more. Kenny, I'm not so sure about, just because this would have been his first match, and I don't know if he's like somebody who's very familiar with lucha libre. I don't know. He doesn't strike me as a guy who's really that familiar with it. I could be wrong, but it kind of like anybody, like I think anybody who's familiar with lucha libre, and if you're a foreigner, American wrestler, you should already know going in. You're supposed, if you're going to go in and you're a heel, you got to play it up a little bit more and be more of a, it's got to be more of a nationalistic type of thing, where you're going to get the Mexican crowd to root for the Mexicans. And I don't think they did. Like, I don't think they did and boo you guys. And they didn't boo them as much. They had, like, when they were on offense, the crowd was completely quiet. And I think that was really where you kind of noticed that they weren't really getting the reaction that they wanted. It was a good match, though. Just not what I expected. I think the post-match with Phoenix, with Kenny Omega challenging Phoenix for the AAA World Mega title, I hope they actually do a little more by that point with Kenny, as far as like maybe having him be a little bit more of a heel on the shows. I don't know. That's the other thing. I think that's the other thing that a lot of, like, with people in wrestling now, because everything's on streaming services, or you could see on YouTube. I think like guys don't realize that you could be like in the old days, like in the old territorial days, or if you know, even going back to the 90s, you could get away with being a heel in one territory or one promotion and be a babyface in another one because there wasn't as much of there weren't as many people watching there wasn't a cross section of people watching these shows. Like, you know, like if somebody would show up in Mexico as a heel and was working like Chris Jericho. If Chris Jericho was a babyface in Mexico, and if he showed up somewhere else and was a heel, it wasn't going to be like this, you know, this shocking news or anything. Like even in Mexico when they were doing it, you used to have guys that would work heel in like in Monterrey, but then they'd be a babyface in Arena Mexico. So, you know, you used to be able to get away with it. I don't know if maybe now, because everything is on streaming services or on YouTube, or people in their minds think, you know, on social media, they kind of think you can't get away with it. I think that they're kind of thinking we can't do this as easily as we used to. Also, I think that honestly, I kind of wish they would have done something different with that match. I do think that they should have had Hijo Vikingo in that. I don't know, maybe they could have done something different. But like I said, I think AAA kind of wanted they weren't gonna say no to whatever AEW suggested as far as a match on this show. And then we got to the main event, which was Blue Demon Jr. beating Dr. Wagner Jr. in a mask versus hair match. And this was a bloodbath. Very early on, Dr. Wagner Jr. wore a mask. This was actually a cool intro because they played a video building up showing you the feud over that last year, and they had Wagner and Blue Demon Jr. on these like stands, or on these things that were going to bring them down. I don't know what they're called, but they were on them, and they were staring each other down as they were coming down, and the video was playing. And then they brought out their families. Blue Demon Jr. came out with his skinny son, and Dr. Wagner Jr. came out with all four of his relatives, which kind of, you know, the odds were clearly against Blue Demon Jr., but somehow Dr. Wagner Jr.'s family did not get involved, whereas Blue Demon Jr.'s skinny son was involved all the time. But this was a really cool brawl. I wouldn't even say it was a brawl. It was more just a spectacle because, you know, they did brawl a little bit, but a lot of it was more about, you know, certain spots and guys bleed and they were bleeding and, you know, showing you the emotion and the blood and whatever weapon they were using, they would actually show you like the setup of what they were using it for. Blue Demon Jr. found a hammer and started hitting Dr. Wagner Jr.'s hands with it. Then to close the match, Blue Demon Jr.'s son tried to bring in a cinder block. He couldn't get it in. The referee stopped him, but somehow it ended up being in Blue Demon Jr.'s hand, and he ended up using it on Dr. Wagner Jr. and knocked him out. And that ended up being the result, the end of it. Really, and Blue Demon Jr. got the win. Really, a spectacle, more of a spectacle, kind of like the LA Park Rush matches, where you're not really sure if it's like a great match, but more of like you're just in awe of what's happening, because these guys bled a lot. Like I said, Wagner Jr. wore the mask. He took it off on his own. I think he should have left it on and like bled a little more onto it, so he could have showed the visual would have been a lot cooler. But you know, once he took it off, there was a lot of blood on him. Then they bandaged up. Oh, when he hit him with the cinder block, they bandaged the paramedics that came out and they bandaged up Dr. Wagner Jr. So everybody kind of wasn't sure if he was going to get his head shaved. But no, he took off the bandages and you know, you had I think his son cut the extensions off. I think they kind of put the bandages on so that people wouldn't see that it was extensions. And then they finally called in the bar. They finally shaved off his hair. I think all of his relatives shaved his head and gave the hair to Blue Demon Jr. Blue Demon Jr. Celebrated and said that he had finally proven to Wagner that he was better than him. And Dr. Wagner Jr. announced that he was retiring and he was going to let the legacy continue on and continue the feud and with Blue Demon Jr. and all of this was going on. So everybody just, it ended up being a really strong finish. Dr. Wagner Jr. retiring. The following day, Dr. Wagner Jr. said he wasn't retiring yet. It was going to take a process of 1 year for him to retire. But he's not going to retire. I mean, Alberto Patron said he was retiring, I think 3 years ago. He's still wrestling. So, whenever somebody says they're retiring, other than, a handful of guys, and Liger's probably going to end up being in that group of guys who does retire, they usually don't retire. And I don't think Wagner's going to retire anytime soon. He just kind of said that just to build up the whole thing. So that was Triplemania. I thought it was a good show, like I said. I would say, if you're going to watch something, I would highly recommend watching the Master versus Hair match, the main event. I would probably watch the Cain Velasquez match just because I think it was something, it was actually, like I said, it was an okay match. And then I would probably definitely recommend the three-way trios match for the AAA World Tag Trios titles. And I would recommend watching the pre-show match. Those would probably be the 4 matches I would definitely recommend. I'm trying to see what else I might have. No, that those would be at the 4 matches if you want to watch those. And I would probably, if you've not watched the Lucha Brothers Laredo Kid versus the Elite, you might want to try watching the AEW one, because everybody says that was the one that was far better than this one. This one, I think, like I said, I think it kind of didn't deliver as much as I had hoped, and I was expecting it to be like, at least, I was expecting like something a lot better than I don't know. I just kind of was expecting a little more out of them, but overall, I thought it was a good show. So July 19th, they actually had the Liger farewell show in Arena, Mexico. Farewell to Mexico in Arena, Mexico, which I actually thought was a pretty good show. I actually thought this was I thought the best match on, the only thing is like the Liger farewell was overshadowed by, of course, LA Park, who was actually booked on the show, and you kind of knew he was going to overshadow Liger's farewell. Although I think CMLL did a lot to make sure that Liger was, farewell was well remembered. I thought the show itself was pretty good. There were a couple of matches that I think kind of like, they had like moments where they were really good, then they just kind of fell flat. The second match on the show was the Ángel de Oro, Niebla Roja Esfinge beating Hechicero Hefesto Luciferno match. I thought that was kind of like a flat finish, just because the way that the referee DQ'd Hechicero for kicking the ropes and fouling. That's a spot where you foul the guy, but usually the referee doesn't call a foul for that. And this time he did, and it made it even look even dumber, because later on the show, I think it was done a couple of times later on, and there were no DQs or fouls or anything like that called in the match, or it didn't determine the match. So that kind of like was something that was a little bit of a disappointment. The Marcella versus Amapola title women's CMLL World Women's Title match. That match was really flat early on. It got better later in the match. I think the closing minutes of that match were pretty good, but the rest of the match was very average. I thought that was really, at that point I was kind of wondering how what they would do as far as the rest of the show. But the good thing is that Liger's farewell, they were able to do enough where the main event with Liger was going to be something everybody wanted to watch. And the other thing was they booked LA Park, and then the match that followed the Marcela Amapola match was actually pretty good, as it was a Relevos Increíbles. It had the Nueva Generación Dinamita of Sansón, Cuatrero, Forastero, and they were teaming up with Volador Jr. to beat the Guerreros Laguneros, Euphoria, Gran Guerrero, Templario, and Soberano Jr. I thought this was a really good match. There was a couple of rough moments early on. As I recall, I think there were a few times where I think Templario missed a spot where he was going to do jump off the ropes, and he slipped off of them. But and then there was a little bit of a they weren't in sync at certain points. The two trios, the two Atómicos teams, especially the Laguneros. Soberano Jr. mentioned it afterwards that he kind of felt he wasn't sure where to be with them because they're already like they pretty much already know what they're gonna do. So it was a little bit more difficult for him to do that, and it ended up being a little. I think it started off a little bit weaker, but then it picked up and got a lot better towards the end. Really good match at the end. I would say the third fall was really what saved the match and went from being an okay match to being a pretty good match. But even that was like that wasn't like I think at that point you kind of just forgot about the match because the next match was really what this show was really like just took over everything. LA Park, Hijo de LA Park, and LA Park Jr. beat Rush, La Bestia del Ring, and Mystico. So you basically had the La Familia Real, the Park family, against the Muñozes. And the Muñoz family, everybody was wondering where Dragon Lee was. I think Dragon Lee was I think he was on vacation proposing to his girlfriend. And that's why he wasn't on this show. But this was really, really good. And I think everybody thought, and again, like I said about the Wagner Blue Demon Jr. match, more of a spectacle than anything else because you really had, I think you had two different matches. You really had LA Park and Rush just bringing the crowd really into that. And then you had everybody else in the match that nobody really cared about. We did get the skinny wrestler showdown of Mystico and Hijo de LA Park. One of these days, Blue Demon Jr.'s son will be in this mix of the skinny luchadors battling it out. I think the best skinny luchadors match I've seen recently was in Oxnard, the Sin Límites. If you've never seen Sin Límite and Sin Límite Jr. from Los Angeles, from the Southern California area, they're two skinny guys. They're pretty good tag team, and they were in this bloodbath in Oxnard, and they actually bled. One of their girlfriends was in attendance, and she wore white pants. And when they were brawling with the heel guy, the heels that they were working with, I don't remember who they were working with, but when they were brawling, they actually they were bleeding, and one of the guys actually went and they brawled next to the girlfriend, and the guy rubbed his masked face on her pants. So when it was over, you had her white pants were full of blood. It was hilarious because she was taking pictures with them, and that's probably my favorite skinny luchador moment of all time. And I hope one day Mystico, Blue Demon's son, or Hijo de LA Park can reach that level of being in the great moments in skinny luchador history, as far as I'm concerned. But like I said, LA Park and Rush was awesome. I mean, basically, these other four guys were there just to make sure they had, because they did a couple of things where they were doing dives at each other, and I think LA Park speared Rush onto everyone. So I think that's I think that was their purpose in the match. Really good. LA Park after the match kind of wanted the mic and wanted to challenge Rush, but they didn't give him the mic. I think he kind of forgot that this was kind of Liger's moment, and it was funny because afterwards Park said he would have liked to have been in that match with Liger just because he would have made sure that Liger would remember him forever because of a beatdown that he would have given him, which was really funny for him to say. They did a ceremony for Jushin Thunder Liger. I think they brought in the ambassador for Japan in Mexico, and I don't know who the other guy was. And then Sofia Alonso was also there, and they gave him a plaque, and they just kind of thanked him for wrestling and what he's done for wrestling. Liger had talked about how when he wanted to get into wrestling, in Japan he was so small that they didn't really want to give him an opportunity, and he came to Mexico and he got the opportunity thanks to Paco Alonso. And he came to the school, and when he met Paco Alonso was so impressed that somebody from Japan had come to Mexico to learn and train to be a wrestler that he actually let him come in and not even have to pay the school fees to train there and to learn. So he always felt appreciated. He always appreciated what Paco did, and he thanked them afterwards. And he also talked about how Arena Mexico was his second home. But the match itself, if you don't remember the match, it had a bunch of rules that were announced. CMLL had somehow invented the four-way match for Jushin Thunder Liger's farewell. Basically, had Jushin Thunder Liger, who beat Negro Casas, Caristico, and Ultimo Guerrero in a match that they called the Relevo CMLL, Relevo CMLL, and CMLL sent out this graphic explaining every single rule that was in this match. Basically, I think they had like 5 or 6 rules to the match. And despite Caristico's claim that this was a 4-way match or a 4 corners match, Julio Cesar Rivera continued to deny that it wasn't, that it was very different. And when the match happened, they only followed one rule. And the first rule that they did follow was Liger was going to start the match and he would pick the first opponent in the match. And they followed that rule. But as soon as the bell rang and that Liger and Casas wrestled for a bit, the rest of the rules went out the window, and Ultimo Guerrero ran in because you couldn't run in the match. You had to tag in somebody at all times. I think I saw this rule also for a Smoky Mountain wrestling show that I just saw recently. Only the difference was they weren't really like stubborn about it. And you know, if a 4-way match in 1992, if a promotion could get away with saying that was the first 4-way match or whatever they want to do back then, because now it's like it's been done so many times. I mean, we're already advanced to the point where like in more than like 6-way, 7-way, 8-way matches. So, you know, 4-way matches already been done for so many years. And what ended up happening was Liger ended up beating Casas. It actually ended up being a pretty good match too. I won't say anything like if you just went with the rules and thought they were stupid. But what ended up happening was it was still a pretty good match. And they got Liger, Liger got the win over Casas. You know, as much as Ultimo Guerrero and Caristico liked being in the match with Liger, I don't think they were going to be the guys who were going to like do the lose the match. They were going to find a way to like not be the guys losing the match. Casas has no problem doing that. Caristico doesn't have a problem doing it either. But you know, it ended up ending that way, and everybody else, you know, after the match they celebrated. They carried Liger up on their shoulders. Very nice segment for Liger. A good way for him to end his career in Mexico. You know, obviously he wrestled a couple matches afterwards. I think he wrestled Saturday in Arena Coliseo, and I think on Sunday I think he worked in Arena Lopez Mateos for their final matches there. And you know, afterwards, like I said, he's very appreciative of what he did, and he hopes to continue training. He talked about that he was asked if he would consider ever like training in Mexico, like helping guys in Mexico, and he said he would very much hope that could be a possibility. I think that would be awesome if they could do that, you know, a couple seminars with him, or just bringing him in as an invited guest, because he did say he wants to come back and visit Mexico as a tourist. He has no intentions of wrestling at the moment. He's saying that. I kind of believe Liger more than most wrestlers as far as like sticking to the retirement thing. I know a lot of guys were talking about it afterwards, about how they were honored to be on the show. There were a couple of people who weren't on the show, like Dragon Lee, who said that he would have loved to have been on the show, and he hopes that he's in one of the farewell matches that he has in Japan, or his farewell match in Japan. He's hoping he's in that match or on that show at the very least. But yeah, that was the July show. I think CMLL going forward is I think we're starting to see a little more of Sofia Alonso's influences as far as the direction she wants for CMLL. Because after that match, or actually during that show, after that show, they kind of started talking about how they were going to do the CMLL Universal Femenil. They hadn't announced that that was the name of the tournament, but they were going to do a tournament where they were going to like showcase the women, and they brought in some new women, or brought back some familiar faces. They brought back Silhouetta, who had actually just quit. Like, she didn't quit, but she had gone independent in CMLL, and like 1 week later, a couple of days later, she ends up being announced as returning, and that was actually one of the women that is now part of this tournament. The first block was already done, and Metallica won that, which was surprising because I don't think anybody expected Metallica to win. The thing that Silhouetta said was that Sofia Alonso actually was the one that directly invited her and asked her to come back to CMLL. I don't know if that means that she's going to get more of an opportunity. What's going to happen beyond this with the women? They brought in 3 new women to the promotion. La Magnifica, who has actually been one of the better independent female wrestlers in Mexico. I saw her a few times years ago when she was in AAA's Quien Pinta Pa La Corona tournament, and she actually looked really good in those matches. She kind of reminded me of a young Marcella. She's gone through a lot over the last couple of years. Her husband was, I think he died I think the car ran him over or something. I can't remember exactly the story of how he died, but he did die a couple of years ago. And she's kind of been more of an independent. She has talked about coming. I think she might have worked a CMLL show recently, but in Guadalajara or one of the shows or Puebla, one of those shows. And but now she's coming in. I don't know. At first I kind of thought maybe it was just them coming in for a one-shot deal. But the other person they brought in 2 other people besides La Magnifica. They brought in Stephanie Vacker, and she's somebody from Chile, and she's been wrestling a lot in Mexico. And for those who don't know who she is, Stephanie Vacker is also married to Ricky Marvin, so she does have a little bit more she has more connections in Mexico. And she was actually wrestling for the Nación Lucha Libre promotion that Alberto just started up. And I think she might have just decided to quit that group, because I think she was booked in the August 4th show, and she ended up not being on that show. So I think she might be a regular now in CMLL. I'm not really sure, but I think that's what's the direction that they're going with. And the third person they added was the returning La Infernal, who hasn't been in CMLL in 20 years. And the funniest thing is that I think she's only wrestled a few times in those 20 years. If you're not familiar with La Infernal, she is actually the widow of Villano 3 and the mother of Hijo de Villano 3 and Villano 3 Jr. So she's now back. I think she's 43, 44 years old, 44, 45 years old, somewhere around that age. And she was in the first block, and she's older, so she's not as good. And 20 years not being in wrestling for 20 years, I wasn't like expecting a lot out of her, and she wasn't very good, but she was already better than like La Comandante, Tiffany, some of those women. Not that that's saying much, but she probably fits in with them, which is unfortunate because you don't really want to add more of those women. And I really think if somebody talked to Sofia Alonso, and if she really wanted to make this division a little stronger, she really needs to bring in a lot more impressive, better, younger women. Not like the daughter of somebody or the mother of somebody or the grandmother of somebody, just because it doesn't really help. I mean, Scotty being there, it's not going to add anything. Some of the older women that are still there, La Comandante, I mean, she should pretty much just be like Terry Bliss second at this point. She's not very good in the ring. But that's one of the concepts that they're doing. And there was the Observer mentioned that Sofia wants to meet with the Ring of Honor officials. So I think there's more of they're trying to expand more. And if you watch what's going on with PWG Battle of Los Angeles, I think you're really starting to see that CML is kind of opening up more to being more of a global promotion, like letting their guys work elsewhere. And that brings me to PWG's Battle of Los Angeles. They're going to actually they've already announced 7 luchadors for that show. Bandito, Phoenix, Taurus, Ray Horace, Laredo Kid. But they've also added CML guys, Barbaro Carbonario and Dragon Lee. That should be interesting. That should be... they still have 2 more spots left, so it's going to be interesting who else will be in this. Obviously, with Taurus and Laredo Kid and Phoenix being involved in AAA, I'm not sure how that's going to work out. I have a feeling that because those guys will come up with the whole they're not under contract to AAA, they might actually be able to get away with it. I'm not really 100% sure if that's how it's going to end up working out. I would hope that's what happens, because there's been times where that's kind of been the case. Should be something that I'm hoping that's something that happens, just because why would you have all those guys on the show and not have at least some interaction with them? It'd be kind of I hope that does happen. I think that's something else. Sofia Alonso has to talk with Ring of Honor. They need to get Bandito some CMLL appearances. I mean, he's gonna work an indie show in Arena Jalisco on Sunday. You can't tell me they can't get him in Arena Mexico on a Sunday if he doesn't have that available. I mean, come on, that kind of seems a little bit. I don't know. It seems kind of weird that they're not using that connection. Same thing. I think they. I mean, same thing with the Crash guys. I mean, if that's something they should kind of be a little more wanting those guys in CML, because who the heck is picking Cybernetico and all these guys to work these shows? They should be focusing on younger guys. Again, that's what I don't know what's going on with them, but hopefully that gets resolved at some point. But this Battle of Los Angeles looks like it's going to be really good. I think there's 2 cavemen on this show too, so that's another thing that's really interesting. I think I'm probably going to try to get tickets to that, at least one of those shows. I don't think I could go to all 3, just because that would pretty much kill my expenses for the remainder. I need to have some money to go to other shows, or like for the holidays, buy gifts and stuff. So definitely at least one show. I'm thinking I might want to go to one. If not, there's other PWG shows. There's plenty of shows to go to. That's about it for this week. If you want more news, more updates, go to luchaworld.com. Also, check out the Patreon page, patreon.com/luchaworld. I just posted Kurt and my podcast with on Paraguayo. Like I said, I think I'm gonna do a Paco Alonso, Sofia Alonso podcast, basically talking about Paco's career, and then also talking about maybe Paco's run as the boss of CMLL, and kind of like what to expect from Sofia Alonso, or what could happen as far as Sofia Alonso taking over. I think a lot of people kind of underestimate women in charge of wrestling promotions, because there really hasn't been a lot of women running wrestling promotions, but they've run some territories over the years, not just in Mexico, but in the United States as well. So, and also I think in Japan, there might have, I think Baba's widow ran it for a bit, but she did, pass the baton over to Muda and a couple of other people to do it. But I think there's some possibility. I think I'm not as negative as far as Sofia taking over, because she seems bright and doesn't seem like she's going to be totally insane as far as what goes on in CMLL. Granted, the programming department is probably going to do stuff that is really going to be head scratching, which is going to be the case no matter what she does, that's going to be involved. But that's what the podcast is going to be about. I'm going to just talk about that stuff, as well as Paco Alonso's career running CMLL. And also I also posted a Boxy Lucha issue, a write-up, and I'm doing one already right now, covering 1981, right before the Paraguayo Chris Adams title match, when Aguayo wins back the WWF Junior Light Heavyweight title, or whatever the title's called. That's going to be that. It also talks about Santo training to be an escape artist. So that's actually something I'm really looking forward to putting up on Patreon. There should be some more stuff being added to Patreon. I have something else that I want to do for my other website concerning, of course, retrowrestling.com. I want to do something else with that. I kind of want to do something that isn't just, it doesn't keep everything separate. You know what I mean? Because I think a lot of people, when they do podcasts or do anything wrestling related, they like to separate everything. They like to keep lucha in one area. They like to keep the Japanese wrestling in one area, and then they like to just focus in WWF or WWE or whatever you want to call it. Over the years, of course, that's what I'm referring to. Or they like to, if it's a territory, they stick to one territory, don't talk about something else. I kind of want to do something that's going to be a little bit different. It's going to be a podcast, obviously, but I want to do something a little different with that. That won't be coming up for a little bit, but Stay tuned to that. That's something that I've already been talking to a couple of people about it. They seem interested in they like the idea, the concept behind it. It should be interesting, but that will probably be added on the Patreon page. But like I said, check all that out, luchaworld.com, patreon.com/luchaworld. Thanks again, everyone, for listening, and we will talk to you guys again soon.